This is Gary Butterfield.
This is Cole Ross.
And you're listening to Best Quality Vacuum, the Duckfeed show covering the Vince Gilliverse. That is Breaking Bad, El Camino, and Better Call Saul.
Yeah, and this week we are hitting kind of the mid-season climax of season 3 here. The episode 1 Minute that was written by Thomas Schnauz, directed by Michelle McLaren, and originally aired on May the 2nd of 2010.
Yeah, it used to be called One Hot Minute, and then the Red Hot Chili Peppers sued him. That's not true. It's kind of the midpoint of the series as well.
True.
It's kind of right in the middle, you know,
Yeah.
and it makes as fine a point for that kind of thing as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. Great episode.
Wonderful episode.
Yeah, wall to wall.
Good comic relief that I forgot was in this particular episode. I mean, like, last episode was real tense too, talking about sunset, everything in the RV. This less of the episode is dedicated to the tension here, but like, again, it is hard to underline when we were watching this how uncertain it was that things were going to happen. When I say when we were watching this when it was originally airing, to all reason, it seemed like that Hank was on the way out here.
It's very tense. It's also the event in this that lives really large, and it's one of those episodes that I think benefits a lot from a rewatch because there are a lot of things in this episode that are great, that are not that.
Yeah.
Specifically, I love Jesse's performance during this entire episode. I think it's absolutely great. All the quiet moments with Hank, absolutely great.
Jesse's in his Emmy bed.
He gets stuck in the Emmy chamber. Yeah,
it's where you lay. It's where you lay when you want to say something gets you an Emmy.
Yeah, and you know, give him the Gary Award. I'll give him my individual Gary nickel. This is a great episode.
Yeah,
probably my favorite episode of season 3 so far. Wall to wall. This picks up immediately after the last episode. Hank getting revenge on Jesse for the hoax call about Marie being in the hospital. Also a very thrilling scene. And then because this is a better show that doesn't lie to things, the rest of the episode is dealing with the consequences of that.
Yeah.
For everyone. One of the things I realized, and this is, I'm sure this has been true about me forever. I just didn't put it into words for a long time. And this is a shitty, like comparatively dumb piece of media for me to realize this, right?
Okay.
But the film Iron Man 3, which is much maligned, but is about Iron Man basically having PTSD.
Yes.
He doesn't suit up for the whole time. He's just having a hard time. And I realized so much of my favorite media is about consequences.
Yeah.
It's not about the climax. It's about what the fuck do you do after the thing. And I love that about this.
Yeah.
He has this big moment. We had this huge tension climax at the end of the last episode, this big kind of catharsis. And it's like, yeah, that in a Western, that'd be the end of it.
Right.
But it's not the end of it. We have an hour to deal with how that unravels and how it affects everyone. You can't take an action without it, having all of these trickle down effects on all the people you're connected to.
Yeah.
And I love media about that.
Yeah, every action and every person is connected to everything else by strings of varying and indeterminate length. And when you pull on one, other things are going to move. I was absolutely going to make a joke about the Twitter meme, like, oh, this is the most the Minions Luau and Banana Island has the best, most accurate portrayal of PTSD in any media. like the most realistically portrayed panic attack.
Yeah.
I was going to say that about Hank, but it's really good. And, watching this again, trying to analyze Breaking Bad as a text, as opposed to just appreciating it as a really good show. This is such a standout episode for Hank because it does everything to redefine him as a character and set him up in contrast to Walt, where Hank is immediately taking, yes, he has consequences that everybody gives him an opportunity to avoid, and he embraces them.
Yeah.
It's just a banner episode for Hank. Dean Sex Gifts Norris does an amazing job here.
Oh, give him the Gary.
Yeah. Gary's for everyone.
Yeah, everybody's they're sweeping the Garys this episode. He does incredible work. For somebody who in season 1 was a big racist lug.
Yeah.
Who we kind of, don't like. Just that's writing, baby. You know.
Yeah.
So we have, Walt, because of these far-reaching consequences, Walt, in order to save his brother-in-law, has to trade in Gale for Jesse.
Right.
I want to talk when we get that scene. I have a lot of things to say about it. Yeah. So that was interesting on this rewatch.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we get the climax of the cartoon cousins. Basically, they're closing in on their final target. That's the climax of the episode. It makes it worth having these two silly cartoons to have this happen and the consequences of it. On this rewatch, for sure, I am happy to see them go.
Yeah.
As a supernatural force, in this universe, they can go.
Yeah, and I think that them making their exit, one of them this episode, the next episode, but here, and kind of the shift in gears from that kind of threat to the threat that Gus imposes, being less outsized on the screen but way more sinister and far-reaching, is a very good contrast.
Much more interesting. At the very least. It's like a mastermind criminal versus like a Jigsaw, or like versus like a Freddy Krueger.
Yes.
Or like, just that kind of thing.
You walk into my house saying Jigsaw ain't a mastermind. Come on.
Jigsaw's done some pretty dumb shit, dude.
Well, yeah.
So they planned to have this climactic shootout with them happen earlier in the season. It kept getting pushed back, I think, to its benefit.
Yeah.
The podcast talks a lot about this. We get this flashback with the cousins as children.
Yeah.
And this was difficult because it is a drowning kids scene. And they go into a lot of detail about how you fake drown a kid on TV.
Good to know. Were you taking notes for our own projects?
Yeah. I was figured we could incorporate that in the network. We never know. But a lot of camera trickery and stuff.
Yeah.
But these two very sweet kids. I love the little details about this. They had an open call. They ended up having two crappy kids beforehand, and like the director is just like, and they just weren't very good. And that made me laugh. I love, get their asses. But these kids were really cute. They had them play, chose who they'd play based on like, okay, you guys get into fights, right? Who always wins?
Yeah.
And then had them, cast them as such.
Oh, that's great.
It's really cute. The kids were afraid they had to shave their heads. They didn't. And they were like, we don't want to do this. And then they end up asking their handler, like, hey, can we show them what these characters are? And they showed them the two cousins walking away from the explosion. And then the kids were like, that's the coolest thing in the world. And then imagine being those kids now and being like, yeah. Like I was Marco Salamanca. Like that fucking rocks.
It's pretty good. Yeah. They knew exactly how to persuade an 8-year-old.
Yes. Real fun.
The commentary is very fun. Not just because Dean Norris keeps on trying to host his own podcast in the middle of it. This time asking Michelle McLaren a lot of questions, but also because we have the Moncada brothers. We have the twins who played the cousins in there, and gosh, them just talking. They are so opposite of anything about the cousins. Like they're just so genial and open.
They keep talking about that on the podcast too. They're like, those guys are really seriously badass. The sweetest guys in the world, but they're fucking badass.
I would argue not mutually exclusive. But it is funny just how just happy in game they are to be there, and just kind of joking around. It's really good.
Podcast is also pretty fun. Thomas Schnaus is on there. Old friends with Vince Gilligan, also came over from X-Files. And they have a really fun busting each other's balls kind of relationship. I can't remember the name of it right now because I'm having brain fog shit these last couple of days, but there's a arcade game that they have set up in their editing bay or directing bay or something.
Okay.
That he was competing with Vince Gilligan for high scores, but it's a one-sided thing. Vince Gilligan kept emailing him that he beat his score, and Thomas Johnson, I played that game once. Some old 80s arcade game.
Was it like Zaxxon or Rastan or something like that?
It's not. It's like Gagarian. It sounds kind of like Gagarian, but that's not. That's almost a chant. So that's really fun. Most of the podcast is very serious, with Dean Norris being insightful about what his character does here, and also being, we've staked our claim in the sand for the show that this is about masculinity. That's the primary focus, and him basically backing that up. This is a show about what it means to be a man, in modern times. and it's good to have that kind of awareness because early podcasts just had Dean, Sex Gifts Norris talking about how badass it was and talking about he's a black belt and all that shit. Kind of being a goofball. And this is really introspective, like showing his internal thinking.
It's great.
Yeah, really good. We start off with this great cold open. Hector Salamanca watching two kids who we find out to be the cousins playing on a playground in the backyard. And he gets this phone call on his big cell phone in his foreshadowing wheelchair chair that I could have done without.
Probably. It's just there. There are at least 3 bullet points on the wiki calling that trivia.
There's a couple trivia things like that. This has some real Wikipedia said it worst kind of shit. Like, when it turns to 3:08 as the minute when Hank gets attacked, that's referencing Walt's address to show that he has a place in this. And I'm like,
it's 307. The production code for this is 307. Yes. And it's like,
and then it turns to the address, and it's like, I don't care. That doesn't do anything.
Piece of trivia that I do like, that cell phone that Hector is using, that was used in an episode of the X-Files that Gilligan and Thomas Schnauz were involved in. And they're like, okay, well, this is taking place in the past. Let's get that ridiculous cell phone from there. Have him play that.
It reminded me, you're a little bit younger than I am, so this might have happened. At one point, when my dad was still around, he had a car phone.
Yeah, my grandpa had a car phone. Yeah, my grandpa had a car phone. Yeah,
those are weird.
Just like in a little not quite like a briefcase, but like it was pleather thing. Like you zipped open and it plugged in. Like it had to run off with a car battery. It's one of those things where I'm like, I'm younger than you, but not that much younger.
I was just curious. I didn't know when the cutoff point was for car phones. So he's talking about, we get one side of the conversation, and it's clear he's talking about Gus setting up his dislike. We get a little bit of backstory on Gus, which almost never happens.
Right.
We know that we're going to find out later that he's, from South America, and they calls him El Generalissimo.
Yes.
The general.
Strongly implying that he's from Chile. Right.
Yes. And we find out, we know he's from Chile later.
Okay.
Chile from later, but we don't know exactly what he did.
Okay.
There. That remains a mystery for the whole series, basically.
Yes, but definitely El Generalissimo implying that he was involved in some like war crimes stuff.
Yes.
Right. And saying like, no, I don't trust him. We're going to let him handle our product. I don't care who he knows. Right. Implying he has greater connection. Then he throw in some good old fashioned racism, nationalism. Never trust a South American. Dirty people. Yeah.
Yep. Apparently a real thing. There's a slur specifically that some people, not painting a broad brush, some people in Mexico have for South Americans. There's a specific word.
Yeah.
I was reading about that. Marco breaks Lionel's toy, and then Lionel complains to Hector, and very specifically, Lionel says, "I hate him. I wish he was dead."
Yeah.
That is the catalyst for this.
Right.
So Hector goes, "Okay, lesson time." Calls him over to get a beer from the cooler, says, no, get one of the cold ones. And then
no, get the one from the bottom.
The best popcorn's at the bottom. He pushes his head under.
Yes.
This mock drowning, where the kid could only actually hold his head underwater for 4 seconds. I'll say it. Pussy. But they use camera trickery to make it work.
Yeah. You can do loops and stuff like that.
They actually did one of those weird things where they took a translucent. It was like this 10-foot tall rig thing that they had translucent water, so the kid's head was not actually in the water. They just shot through the water.
Oh, and the tank broke. During one of the sessions. Yeah. But it's like, hey, is this like, hey, Lionel, is this what you want? Right? Is this what you want for your brother to drown? How long do you think he has down there? 1 minute, maybe more? Just to say,
and
like,
he starts punching him. He's like, you're gonna have to try harder than that.
Yeah.
I love this. And he hits him in the face, and that's where he's like, okay, you've learned the lesson.
Yeah. La familia es todo is what Hector says. Yes. Says to him. And we see how a cousin is made here.
Yes.
To a degree. Just it is a
horrific
contrast.
Abuse.
Yeah.
One of the things about the show that is so funny, like having now seen Better Call Saul and everything, is as much as this show does deal in moral grays and stuff, the Salamancas absolutely have to be put fucking down.
Oh, they gotta go.
Every single one of them are grotesque monsters. This absolute monster family.
Yeah, but making them this way, like no snitching. You have to do everything to to save each other. That kind of deal.
Yes.
It is a contrast between these two young kids who absolutely could not have anything less to do with the cousins that we eventually see.
Yeah, they're kids.
Being turned into them. Yeah, they're not born; they're made. Right.
Yes.
But this crossfades to the cousins in present day, lighting a candle and then putting Hank's picture on this altar again to the saint of death. Marking him.
If I had magic editing powers, I would love for it to pan over and just show everyone else they've killed. Having one of these little calendars. Like they actually had like everyone that was in the back of that.
The van lady. Yeah.
Yeah. They're just like, they shouldn't have wronged them. Family is everything. We cut over to Jesse getting home here. And this was originally going to be the open for the show, but it didn't work. They didn't like it. I'm glad they chose not to have this opening.
Yes.
Hank shows up. He's saying, you got nothing on me. Call my lawyer. And Hank just comes in and starts beating the shit out of him.
Oh, it's so bad.
Yeah, it's really brutal.
Gets him down on the floor and is just punching him. And then he realizes what he's doing and the way his face changes here. But he just stops himself and gets up.
Jesse's not moving too. Like it's not. Yeah, it's. He would have killed him if he would have kept doing it.
Right. But I love this trick when it happens. Just a matter of playing with depth of field where he steps out of a fuzzy area, like closer to the camera in focus, like that. Yeah. It's a common trick, but it's really good for this one. He steps outside. It doesn't show him calling 911, but he does.
Tonight.
Yes.
We cut tonight when all that stuff's already happening.
Yes.
Like the MTs are there. The statements have already been made, all that stuff. And this is the first of these choices that Hank makes. Like Hank could have left.
Yeah.
Hank probably could have killed him.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been fine.
No.
Nothing would have happened.
Another difference from Walt.
Exactly.
Hank knows when to walk away. He understands when he has breached a moral code and steps away even from his detriment as opposed to following through and trying to cover up.
Yeah.
Right.
So ASAC walks up, great acting on this guy, like the look on his face, and just like, listen, they're ready to take a statement. You can take more time if you want. Maybe you want to talk to a lawyer.
He asks him, have you decided what's happened here?
Yeah. Because he knows, because cops are fucking crooked. Yeah. One of the things that they talk about in the podcast that was interesting is that Vince Gilligan was talking about how he has friends in the DEA, and how he everything portrays crooked cops all the time, and he wanted to have a non-crooked cop,
right,
as a thing. And it's interesting how that has become the subversion.
Yes.
Just having they're going to cover it up because it happens all the time in real life, but just not having it happen is the more unbelievable, fantastic thing. He's going to actually deal with it.
Yeah.
Shit,
it has to be
that doesn't happen.
A monumental testament to the strength of this character that, he is not going to take advantage of every advantage that is extended his way.
To him.
Yeah.
So we cut over to Saul. Saul taking a picture of Jesse's face, which is absolutely ruined.
Oh yeah,
destroyed. He makes a Rocky reference, like, "Hey, Adrian, Rocky wants his face back," and he starts bright siding it, like, "Hey, this picture, this is your get out of jail free card. You know what that means? You're home free. They don't want this picture everywhere. They won't touch you."
Say like, hey, guess what? Everything is gone. Basically, and this is another thing that Hank probably realized. He completely screwed his case.
Oh yeah,
whatever he might have had, right?
Yep.
And then Walt shows up, and he is genuinely shocked by what's happened here. And Saul can't stop being Saul. Says, "Hey, Walt, you're now officially the cute one in the group. Paul, meet Ringo. Ringo, Paul.
Yeah, very cute."
Yeah. And Walt apologized to Jesse, saying, like, I had no idea that this was going to happen. And Jesse's having none of it. He's shutting him down. And he says, but it did. Right.
Yeah. And Walt says, well, it worked, and I think Walt's being genuine here. I don't think he did think that Jesse would just get the shit beat out of him.
Yeah. Like he probably didn't think that Hank had it in him or that he would have done that. He probably thought Hank would have been smarter, more calculating. I don't know.
Like less emotional.
Yes.
Like what Walt would do.
Yes.
Except unless Skylar's getting deep down dirty.
Well, no, like Walt thinks he would do.
Like Walt thinks he would do. Like Walt is capable of doing from time to time.
Yes.
And Walt's like, well, what happens now? And this is Jesse's Emmy speech. here.
I mean, it is one of 2 Emmy speeches.
Yeah, he keeps doing it. The you, I turned down you is the other one. Yeah, this is great.
But so what happens now? I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but your scumbag brother-in-law is finished, done. I will own him when he's over. I'm going to be there taking every cent that he and his wife make.
Sue him into oblivion. So much so that he kills himself to get me out of his head.
I will haunt his crusty ass forever until the day he sticks a gun up his mouth and pulls the trigger just to get me out of his head. That's what happens next. This is the more believable side of Jesse being the bad guy, because it's plausible.
It's plausible, but also he's this guy just extrajudiciously came in and beat the shit out of him.
Nearly executed him by fist. Yeah.
I think he also wants to do this to punish Walt.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
This is the idea of bringing down Walt. We're going to get into that later when he gets offered the job.
Yes.
He wants to take down this whole crew.
Yes.
They are Salamancas to him.
Yes.
Saul's like, that's a bad strategy. I may have used get out of free jail card a little bit too liberally. The DEA is going to hit back. They're going to hit back hard. Walt says, "Come on, move on, son." Very funny. And
Take
just
the
like
W.
nothing changes. I'm going to get an RV and start cooking again.
Yeah.
And then Jesse's like, what happens when you get caught? Jesse goes, "Well, I got to get out of jail free card. It's not my face. It's you. If they nab me, I will make a deal and I'll give you up. You and your $1 million drug ring. You're my free pass, bitch."
The pause before the bitch is really good.
It's great.
It's very long.
So, just really, this is something Jesse wouldn't do later, maybe. This is a dangerous thing to just say to somebody who has people killed all the time.
Yeah.
But Jesse at this point, as he's going to talk about later, has nothing to live for.
Right.
It feels like. Out in the hall, Saul says, "Why are you certain that Jesse won't turn? There's no honor among thieves, except for us." And Saul says there may be a time to talk options.
Right.
Later.
Yeah.
Sending him to Blease.
Options. Please, we know what the options are.
Yes.
So Hank is giving his first statement to the prosecutors, and is truthful up until when they ask, like, okay, so after you found out your wife's hospital car crash was a hoax, is that when you drove to Jesse's house? And you get the lawyer whispering, and then no, refused to answer, taking the fifth, and this is when they get the news. Jesse's pressing charges.
I love this bit too, where they're like, he's pressing charges and like, oh, the charges of a meth head. Is like, well, he's clean. He's refusing his pain meds.
Yeah.
They're going to take the meeting. They're like, we actually just need a picture of your knuckles real quick, Hank. Bandages off, please. Just to show, the damage did to him to beat the crap out of Jesse.
Yeah.
Really, really tough. I absolutely fucking adore this set of shots. Hank gabbing his stuff. This is, awful. Like, even if you don't like Hank, at this point, like, human empathy. And then opening the elevator, and the elevator, just Marie's there already. She came there. It's such a goddamn sweet moment.
It is. Yeah.
And then they immediately cut to him crying in the elevator on her shoulder. It's so good. And then cut to the door open, and they're just fine again. They put it back together to put on the face. I love all of that so much. That's incredibly deft. And very, very, very sweet, very well observed about, good relationships. Like good spouse shit.
Yeah.
Going on here.
They're there even when you wouldn't think they would be. They are. I don't know, just open and available. And this is an incredibly cathartic moment, not just because this is the site of previous breakdowns, right?
Yes.
That Hank has had, and we have seen that he's been able to put himself together very quickly. Like, this is consonant with
he
that,
puts on the
right?
face.
Yeah. But like, this is finally a breakdown that has catharsis, right?
Well, it's a breaking point for their relationship as well.
Yes.
Like, he's letting her in, which he hasn't been doing during this entire thing. Like, he's hit rock bottom, and it's so fucking good. We get the, he says not a word of this to anybody. And I love this where Marie just goes, okay. And he goes, who'd you tell?
Because he knows who his wife is.
Yeah. And then immediately cuts to Skylar.
Yeah.
There.
Skylar inadvertently assuring that Gale is going to die.
Yes. Basically.
Going to Walt's place, to to talk to him. And when she scopes out his conduct, she's like, "Oh, I guess crime does pay." Is getting her barbs in.
She's waiting that line. She's just working on that one. And I love it. Walt just like, "Did you come here to make fun of me or what?" And she says, talks about Hank. Ask if any of this can get back to him. And she says no, or he says no. And she's, "I'm here to talk about the charges. I want you to help Hank by talking to Jesse." And Walt says, like, "We're not friends. We're not close." And she says, "I'm not asking." Like, I love that. Like, she's not really saying it in a threat way, but she keeps repeating that. Like, "I'm not asking."
Right.
Try your family. Yes. And he goes, "He's not currently my family."
Yeah.
Brutal.
Real shitty thing to say.
Yeah. Shitty to Hank. He's mad at Skylar.
Yes.
For this, that's aimed at Skylar.
Yeah.
But
we see that he takes this to heart and starts and gets the wheels moving. But he rushes her out, saying like, "Hey, I'm late to work or whatever. I gotta go." And he gets to the lab. I love this. God, it's so sad how little Gale we get, because
we do get very little Gale. This scene did make me think that if I were Walt, I would also have Gale murdered.
Oh yeah.
I couldn't work with the Gale.
No,
it's so romantic at first, but boy, does he come on strong.
It's real. Like in a few ways, Homer has a point about Ned Flanders. Right?
Yeah. A little bit of that. Or I was thinking about like anybody who is so desperately looking for like approval, like that. Like, I don't know. That's not comfortable.
Yeah.
To be looked up to that degree.
No.
That's weird.
But his reaction, Walt lies like, "Oh, I had car trouble." I was like, "Oh, that's a bummer. You should call me. I would have come and got you."
Yeah, it picks you up anytime, buddy.
And he's dressed differently. Previously he's been dressed like this libertarian hippie kind of guy. Here he's not wearing sandals. Walt remarks on that. He's wearing like a button-up shirt. He's dressing like Walt, and that was actually David Costable's idea. Gale's actor was like, "Oh yeah, no." He would start mirroring him.
Yeah, single white femaling him. Walt starts going through things like, "If you check the hydroxy chloride or whatever," and Gale's like, "I did." And then Walt asks another thing. He's like, "I thought you might ask that." Taken care of.
Have you filtered the distillate? Like, "Oh no, I got you."
I thought you might ask that, but I sure did. Yeah. And just so desperate for attaboys that again I would have Gale killed.
Yeah. And not to make it a two Simpsons references on the same heading. It's very much Marge and the Dream House. The autovac is on Dirt Patrol.
The autovac is 100% on Dirt Patrol here. Gus is enjoying his swing-a-majig.
And then Gale, does the dorkiest thing, which is he does a bogey impression. He says, "This might just be the beginning of a beautiful friendship."
And Walt looks at him like, "Oh no!" Like, even before he makes the more motivated decision,
right,
to get rid of Walt. This is him being like, maybe or get rid of Gale. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad without Gale. It's very rough having somebody do this to you. Ugh. So the cousins pull up in a parking lot to meet with an arms dealer, played by the guy who plays Ryan McPoyle.
It's so good. Okay.
I love seeing that guy and stuff.
I like seeing that guy and stuff. He is so perfectly cast here for this. I cannot come up with a reason for why I like this when I don't like the it was an M name guy, because it's just as cartoonish. He's also
a cartoon.
He's a cartoon person. I can't come up with a reason. So this passes for me. It might just be because I like that character. I associate him with McPoyle from It's Always Sunny, but also like I feel like this is better written too, because he's doing, and this is a Better Call Saul character coming in and doing this. Yeah.
Whereas even I guess the other guy too wasn't funny.
Yeah.
This isn't like super funny. He's just talking about making it to a certain time because there's a woman who has a fetish that's being peed on, and women who are from warmer climes like being peed on. You think it'd be the colder ones, and that you don't get pissed on for warmth.
You get,
is my understanding that that currency doesn't spend very long.
Complicated, eventually it gets real cold too. Probably one imagines.
Cold, very, very quickly.
Yeah.
You know,
I think that's probably more
yeah.
for degradation, kind of thing. Yeah.
That's my guess.
Yeah.
As somebody who's not into the urine world.
You know.
But I just like it more largely for McPoyle reasons. It's also shorter.
True.
And fewer plot things. I was going to say fewer plot things depending on, he does give him a fate bullet, which is the silliest things that happens in this whole show.
Yeah, it's some Final Destination stuff, actually.
Yeah, it's but other than that, it's not the thing that leads like Hank to, it's not a serious scene with Hank being really angry and then going and abusing a clerk. This is kind of played for comedy. It's hard to explain why it works. It might just be McPoyle love.
Here's a motor mouth set up against these silent golems, basically these Terminators. Again, I love this. It's a shock to the system if the body's not properly acclimated, but that's for smarter minds than me. Science is a mystery. Now let me show you these hollow points.
This person who loves getting pissed on also needs to be in bed by 10. It's so weird. So he shows them the guns. He's running a special on hollow points. He's talking about. He gives them to keep one. Gives them one to keep in the house. He puts it in his pocket. That is the load bearing fate bullet, the weapon of fate. They ask about vests, and he's like, "Here's the vest." He's like, "Do they work?" And he goes, "Oh, I never leave the house without them." Yeah. He shows his off, and they shoot him in the chest.
Yeah. Point blank, and it stops a Full Metal Jacket round. It's a good vest, although realistically, and I like this. I like when they actually being shot, like that energy has to go somewhere. This breaks his ribs, like he is hurt. He's out of commission for this, but they don't kill him. They leave them money as he writhes on the trailer floor.
He never tells them how much. They just kind of leave what they think is appropriate. I love them again. And this guy totally saw their face. Like if this show went on long enough, they would just get arrested and put under the fucking jail.
Oh yeah,
like they're the worst criminals. At this. So Walt has come up with his idea here, which is to come up with a smoke screen to fire Gale.
Yes.
So he's making up stuff. Mm-hmm. He needs to create a paper trail. I understand this happens in real life. I've done a lot of supervising student employees. A lot of times a student would be really shitty, but I would try to be a good boss. So I wouldn't write them up officially. And then when I came time to fire them, I couldn't. So then my boss would say, "Hey, you just need to start marking shit they do." So you have evidence of it. That's what Walt's doing here.
Yeah. And saying tapping on a thermometer saying like, "Hey, what did I tell you to set this at?" It's at 75, but Walt says he told him 85. Gale wrote it down. We have seen Gale as such a stickler for details. He would not have misheard this. No. But Walt tears into him, this is chemistry. Degrees matter. You've just brewed up a big batch of useless sludge. Right.
Yeah, flush it, and that's again just to create this plausible ability. We get Hank dressed up in a suit for the deposition, sitting on the edge of the bed. Yeah. Again, I love all of the Hank Marie stuff in this. Is goddamn knockout. Marie sits down and she's doing her best. Yeah. Just tell him that Jesse kid attacked you. He resisted arrest. He maybe hit you with a pan, and your muscle memory kicked in. Happens all the time. And Hank goes, "A pan, huh?" Like he realizes what she's doing.
Yes.
And previous Hank, 2 episodes ago, Hank, who was very short and losing his mind, would be furious at this. He'd be dressing her down for her bad ideas. Yes. This Hank, who is more cognizant and ironically more himself, even though he's going to say a line that's not about that, more himself is like, "No, I recognize you're trying to help. So I'm not going to make fun of you. It's just no, I can't do this. I'm not going to go into a lie."
Yeah. And she says, "Why should you be the one who goes away, for doing the right thing?" Right.
He's like, "I wasn't the right thing."
No.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. God, it's so cognizant and so self-aware. She's like, you made one mistake. She's like, "No, it wasn't one mistake. I've been unraveling." He talks about how facing Tuco changed him, in ways that he can't control. He talks about how he freezes up all the time. And I love that because this is a series about change, about the ways that people, can go from one thing to another. And this is Hank, I mean, if not embracing, at least acknowledging it. And at this point, no longer being terrified. Yeah. Right. Yeah. This is him accepting it and recognizing this might not actually be for the worst. Like he sees his actions in a very clear light. as it is, and he is taking that as evidence. He says the universe is trying to tell me something, and I'm ready to listen. I'm just not the man I thought I was. I think I'm done as a cop, and even as this is a resignation, this is stepping away from power, this is stepping away from outward machismo or anything. This is Hank being so much more of a man than Walt could ever be.
Yeah. It's worth noting this gets tested immediately after this, and he also sublimates in a different way. Through minerals, which we'll get into. So he's not quite done on his journey, but this is a major turning point.
Yeah.
The other thing that's worth noting, and I'm not calling this is for both of us, just saying this out loud for the audience. We keep talking about masculinity or what it means to be a man in this. Yeah. Like that language is bad.
It
for
is.
This.
Yes.
It's just the parlance.
Right.
What we mean is an upstanding person.
Yeah.
I honestly hate all of the things I see that are about like expressing femininity or expressing masculinity, and then them being tied to virtues has always driven me nuts.
Yeah, as if people who are born with testicles have any kind of monopoly on integrity.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Honesty or whatever, or that people who were born without testicles have any kind of monopoly on sensitivity or listening or any of these things. Like those are just good qualities of being a person, regardless of what set you came with. It's just it's the terms the show is using for it, and it's the terms that the language we have for it, because culture's not there yet.
Yes.
But I just want to point that out. I'm not calling you out for that.
No. I was aware of that when I was even writing the notes, but it is so, I don't know. I feel bad for reinforcing that language, but it is also, it's also just such the shorthand, right?
Yeah. It's the language the show uses. What does a man do? A man provides.
Yes.
That like the language the characters use is that, but it's not, it doesn't reflect reality.
No.
All that stuff is bullshit, and you should exercise it from your head. If you can get rid of that stuff, you will be a better person.
Yeah. I think this is if we're talking about this in gender neutral terms, this is Hank having more integrity than Walt could ever put together, and Hank definitely being less self-deceptive. He is being more honest and outward with this after balling up so tightly before, under the pressures of his role. Looking down the barrel of having the role that he has lived entirely for so long lifted from him, he can kind of see a future for himself outside of that framework, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Really good stuff.
Yeah.
We have one side of the conversation, again mirroring the beginning, where Walt calls Gus and it's talking about how Gail isn't working out. And I love this because he's nervous about selling this. I know. It's just not working out. I think our first best option is Jesse. Gus doesn't respond. I love that.
He's like, Gus? What? He looks at the phone to see if it disconnected.
Yeah, love it. He didn't just hang up on him.
Yeah.
And Walt plays a card here. He goes, there's a shorthand. He tries to justify it, but then he tries to big time him a little bit and says, I accepted your offer. You said the lab is mine, and I know how best to run it. And Gus accepts this.
Yeah.
Sealing many fates.
Sealing bunches of fates, and it is absolutely clear Gus is doing this because he knows that Gale is still in his camp, regardless of after this ends, right?
Yep, he'll have Gale in the back pocket. He knows he only needs Walt for 3 months. After my business is done with him, what happens to him is no concern of mine.
Yeah,
like he's being asked to tolerate Jesse for 3 months.
Yeah.
And then you got an amazing typo in the notes here, by the way.
Okay.
Walt, read this next sentence. Just read it out loud as written, please.
Walt goes into Jesse's hospital room to make the job offer. Jesse balks. I don't want a monkey. I want you.
That's great.
No.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was I don't want your money.
Yeah,
I don't want you. No. I got it confused with another scene. How funny would it be if I don't want a monkey? I don't want a monkey. I don't want you. Sorry, that's my fault.
That's okay. Yeah. No, it's fine. No, because that's what it is. Walt goes in and he says like, "Hey, Jesse, there's just an opportunity to talk about." They had last left off with Jesse making this grand promise.
Yeah.
Right?
You're right. I just
No, I'm explaining this for the audience who might be confused. And Jesse balks because Walt at first frames it as we have a lab assistant opening, and he says oh well, you just sure, whatever.
You're trying to save your dickbag brother-in-law.
Yeah, and he's like, well, no, I don't want a monkey. I want you. He is saying that like Jesse is not just a pair of hands with ears. right?
Yes.
But Jesse sees through it.
Yeah. Walt says, we'll split everything again 50-50, $1.5 million. Jesse refuses. He goes, did you hear me right? And this is where Jesse gets his groove back. It does a second Emmy bed. I heard you fine. I said, no. And this is the line I thought you messed up. No. I'm not turning down a monkey. I'm turning down you, which I would thought that was what it was.
Yes.
I'm not turning down the money. I'm turning down you. And just the emotion in this is fucking great.
Oh, it's so good. He's barely holding it together. Yeah.
And lays it out. Ever since I met you, everyone I cared about is gone, ruined, turned to shit, dead. After I hooked up with you, I've never been more alone. I don't want anything. You don't give a shit about me. You said I was no good. I'm nothing. Why would you want me? My meth is inferior. You said my cook was garbage. Screw you. Fuck you. And Walt, at this point, because that really got to him, saying his cook was, this is all just a show about people trying to find father figures in so many ways, right?
Or, validation.
Validation, right. Yeah. And just, and Walt just says, no, your method was good. It's as good as mine, or your meth, and then leaves.
Yeah.
I feel like Walt does not know this will work. He's hoping because he's so nervous when he gets the call later.
And so much of this is also, as we can focus on Jesse, he's right. Well, he has enough resources. He can rebuild his life. He is not necessarily as far at the end of the road, but he has lost plenty here,
Yes.
But the wound to his pride is, him being denied a purpose.
Yes. Yeah. That is the spot of Walt that's in Jesse.
Yes.
This is Jesse alighting a little bit of responsibility as well.
Yes.
This is not all Walt's fault. Walt is the villain of this show. I know that I have a tendency to go to bat for Walt sometimes. I think that it's more of a gray area thing. Jesse, who I also have a tendency to go bat for Jesse. Jesse's not innocent during any of this shit. He's just in tons of fucking pain, just got the shit beat out of him.
Right.
He's having a bad time.
And he's raw dogging reality here too.
Yes.
He's got no pain meds in him. What I want to call attention to is how much Walt is, kind of indirectly proven to be a hypocrite here, right? We have no idea if he was, lying to Jesse when he said that his meth was inferior. How would he know just by looking at it, right?
Yeah.
That is mirrored with him getting rid of a whole batch of the stuff, right? It was never about the science.
I'll put an asterisk real quick. Okay. His Walt being bad was also a psyop from Gus.
Well, yes.
In a weird way, everybody's manipulating everyone in this. Walt was doing that just as a pride point. But also Gus was using his language very specifically to imply that it was worse.
Yes.
He wouldn't have any way to know it, but Gus was manipulating him into doing it.
Yeah, but I mean, Walt had no way of knowing by looking at it. He saw that and was like, he was surprised. What is that? What are you showing me? And just by eyeballing it, he was like, oh, this is terrible. Shoddy work, Pinkman, shoddy work. Going back into hard-ass teacher mode for it. But as much as he says, the chemistry is king or whatever, that, we know he's lying. We know that he is standing on a principle that doesn't exist. But here, trashing the whole batch in order to get rid of Gale, turning on this and using it and basically admitting this is secondary. I will lie about this. We know Walt is a hypocrite, but I want to call it out because that is something that is, I think, not as forefronted in this scene, but is absolutely there. Yeah.
It's a thing he flexibly believes.
Yes.
It's not that there's no belief to it. It's just he believes it when it's convenient.
Yes. Yeah.
Walt gets home. He gets a call from Jesse, and Jesse, 50-50. Yeah. Okay. Then the only thing I don't like in this episode, the shot is really on the nose.
A little bit.
Magic Bullet is a little bit on the nose too, but it's so cool that I don't mind. But Jesse looks over at the pain chart and focuses in on the worst pain possible, which if you've never seen the pain chart is a Mr. Man, Busy Town frowny face.
Yeah.
Is the worst pain possible. It's not somebody screaming or anything. It's just the "we are gonna die" Indiana Jones gif. And just looks at that and he's like, as if to show the audience he is in the worst pain possible.
Right.
This is a horrible shot and should have been cut from any self-respecting show.
I don't care for it one bit.
Yeah. So Hank gives a statement and he confesses to everything.
Yes.
His lawyer tries to stop him, but he's like, no, I'm ready to accept the consequences. ASAC suspends him without pay, asks for his badge and gun. And Hank looks him in the eye and just nothing back. Nobody feels good about this.
Important that he gives up his gun for what's coming up here. And then as Hank is going to the elevator, ASAC comes up to him, now outside of the view from the lawyers, says, hey, just don't take it from me, or don't tell anybody I told you, but it's coming through that Pinkman isn't pressing charges. And he says, maybe you have a guardian angel.
So you can build some kind of life, even if you can't do this. This is the thing I wanted to talk about with Walt. I think that, when Walt means well, I think it's worth pointing out, because that's the tragedy of Walt. He does want to save Hank.
Yeah.
That's why he's doing this. That is why he got rid of, obviously I'm making all these jokes about Gale being fucking annoying. But that is why he does that. He's giving up $1.5 million to save his brother-in-law's career.
Yes.
That is an act of putting family first, even if it's the most fucked up, shitty way of doing it.
Right.
It's awful, but it is well-intentioned. If you, it's not just him being a mustache twirling villain. This guardian angel line is important. That is somebody looking out for Hank, even if it does end up, he's also getting him paralyzed from the waist down, kind of, for a little bit, just a little tad, but that is a well-intentioned thing.
Yes.
Walt is not being strong-armed into that. Skyler says, I'm not asking, but Skyler doesn't have power over him.
Right.
He wants to do it.
Yeah.
So a little later, Hank is walking out of the parking lot in a car. He just picked up flowers for Marie in a grocery store parking lot.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'll tell you more about it. It is what it is, but I'll tell you more when I got home. I think things are going to be okay.
Yeah.
And gets in the car and he gets a phone call from a distorted voice and says, 2 men are trying to come in to kill you in 1 minute.
Yeah.
I want to talk about this for a second too. For some reason, so I will refresh my memory with clips from Breaking Bad on YouTube.
Yes.
If I watched the episode a while back and I want to rewatch certain parts of it. So I get suggested a lot of YouTubes. And for some reason, just fandoms being not very smart, I think, the question of who called Hank and why is considered a big question in the fandom. And that drives me fucking nuts, because it's showing some real media illiteracy.
Yeah.
Who knows, right? Who knows about, not who knows who did it, but who knows about this happening, that it could happen, right? So obviously this is somebody from Gus's camp.
Yeah.
But
be it
people
Victor,
are like, why,
be it Mike. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're like, why would Gus do this? And it's like, you fucking morons. One, he has an interest in keeping Walt happy. 2, he fucking hates Salamancas.
Yeah.
There's no reason for him not to, but this is treated, there are so many 10-minute long, why did, who warned Hank? Why did Gus warn Hank? All these things, as if this is a big mystery or plot hole.
Yeah.
And it makes me very mad about the media literacy on YouTube.
It's a real let them fight kind of thing, right? Because Gus doesn't want this DEA agent rolling around who seems to be on the trail. But
close to his head chef.
But if he makes it into a fight, then maybe we have these fucking Terminators taken off the board too.
He has nothing to lose from it. And he also he has an interest in keeping Walt happy, because he's going to make a lot of money in this 3 months. You know, it's just really frustrating to me that people couldn't figure that out, because the show doesn't spell it out. And I understand, every once in a while, I feel like I can be overly literal with stuff. I like proper trails laid for things. Yeah. This is a proper trail.
Yeah.
I get frustrated when people take it too far the other way and do not see the trails that are there. It doesn't have to be a big yellow jump on me ledge.
Right.
In terms of plot.
Yeah. The thing that annoys me about this is, why only 1 minute's notice?
Why not mail him a rocket launcher? If he wants to take him out. 1 minute is not very much notice. That feels like it's for drama purposes.
Well, yeah.
The other thing I thought about this is, why doesn't he leave? The parking lot.
He said earlier he freezes.
Yeah, he does freeze. He goes into a panic freeze. He calls Gomi back and says this is a bad joke, even by your standards. He starts looking around the parking lot for suspicious people. Reaches for his gun that isn't there. The clock ticks over and he sees the cousins walking towards him.
Yeah.
They split on 2 other things. I love this. He looks over to the left. He sees somebody go to wipe their windshield, who's also bald. It looks like he's pulling out a machete. Cuts that guy. There's 2 comedy moments in this on accident. That's one of them.
That, and when the guy says Jesus Christ and he gets shot.
Yeah, the fuck that guy specifically moment. That's very funny to me.
Yeah. So Hank is surrounded, basically.
Yep.
Lionel walks up behind Hank, behind the car, and shoots at him through the rear windshield, kind of hitting him in the arm, but missing vital points. And Hank, thinking very quickly, backs his SUV up into Lionel, crushing his legs into the bumper of the car behind him.
And then pushing into another car.
Yeah, then keeping him pinned. Yeah.
The production details on the scene are great. Lionel was actually in the trunk of Hank's car, is how that worked. They like cut out the back. Also, they shot this in 2 days, which is incredibly impressive. You know, they talk about like, you know, on a film, this would be weeks of shooting. They did this in 2 days. You know, Marco comes up from the driver's side and puts a couple more bullets in Hank, including Hank crawling away and getting shot in the ass. It looks like it's in the ass. He's getting shot in the spine.
Yes.
Here.
Yeah.
Marco gets over to the driver's side. Hank's gone, so he releases the gear, and Lionel falls loose. And Lionel says, "Finish him." This is the only time the cousins speak English this episode. You know, vest and finish him.
He doesn't say finish. He says finish him in Spanish. It's vest and do they work? Is the English lines.
Yeah, he says finish him. Yeah. So Marco looks around until he sees the guy and goes, "Holy shit!" And then gets gets shot in the stomach for no real reason.
Plugged in the gut. And a lady screams, and Marco decides not to shoot at him.
It's great. It's very funny.
It's worth noting that when Hank backed up into Lionel, Lionel's gun flew into the car. You know, he dropped it, and Hank has carried it with him as he has crawled away. You know, Marco has seen, okay, he's not here, and then goes looking for him. Hank is crawling out, and he's put the rounds in there. And then when he goes to reload, he drops the fate bullet. He drops the sample hollow point.
He only has to reload because he shot that one specific guy too. You know, again, just a lot of weapons of fate shit.
Yeah.
You know, so Hank puts 5 bullets into Marco's chest, but Marco's wearing the vest.
Yeah.
He doesn't care about broken ribs. So Marco puts multiple bullets into Hank. And he aims, he's going to finish him off. And he goes, "No, too easy."
Yeah.
And he goes to get his shiny fireman's axe. And we get this very intense scene of Hank seeing the dropped bullet and through all of his wounds and everything, trying to load up the bullet into his gun.
His hand's too bloody, and his grip too weak to to hold on to it securely. He was dropping it several times as he's trying to load it into the chamber. Right. Yep. Something about the sound design in this scene is amazing. The car alarm is going the entire time in this. The music is very tense. Also, like the particular the gunfire in this is actually like I don't want to say accurate because whatever, but like these are high caliber handguns. They're like 1911s, so they're shooting 45s at each other. Each one of these comes across like a cannon shot, and it is so intense and it is so fucking raw. Yeah,
really good.
Yeah.
So Hank gets the bullet in time, shoots Marco, blows his head wide open, spraying blood onto the camera, and the axe lands next to Hank's head in the pavement, sharp enough to cut into the pavement.
Yeah.
Here.
And then we get like a master shot, like a crane up high showing the end results of this. Hank lying on the pavement, Lionel lying next to the car, Marco's body there, just complete and utter chaos.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
It's super, super tense and everything. Again, it is hard to express what this felt like when you first watched it. I try not to watch ahead for this show, which is ironic because we're recording ahead. We're still in strike times for people listening to this in the future. I try not to watch ahead because I don't want to have to watch everything twice. I just don't want to spend I want to spend my time differently. But it takes everything not to just pick this up with the next episode because it's such a goddamn good cliffhanger. Just a spectacular, this show, this episode, I think does a great example of what the show does, where it's great macro and micro writing. What I mean by that is that like the plotting is very good. Everything that led to this point makes sense, except maybe the bullet of fate, which didn't need to happen. That could have just been a regular bullet. But except for possibly the bullet of fate, everything makes sense getting here. It's opening up really interesting new questions and situations that are going to then unfold into new interesting questions and situations. The next level down, like the thematic stuff, all of the things with this commentary on masculinity, the comparing and contrasting, like the high school literature, character study stuff is absolutely on point. And then the dialogue is very sharp.
Yep.
This episode has at least 3, monologues that are really good. At the very least, like this is the show firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
This episode, I don't think there's a vertical slice that we've had yet. It may not be my favorite episode of the show so far, but in terms of a vertical slice of what this show can do, I think this is absolutely superb.
Yes.
Excellent work.
Yeah, it is ridiculously good. And back to that thematic kind of thing, right? Like this is a badass, it's a badass scene, right?
Yes.
Usually it's the kind of thing that people fixate on when they see Walt, get out of a particularly tight situation, through cunning and gumption and resourcefulness or whatever. And, they do not see, all of the bad morals and stuff behind it or whatever. A lesser show would just kind of like let you have these. Every one of these heightened moments has always come with a cost, right? Like, and Hank is going to be paying for it for the rest of, yes, for the rest of the show, but very directly for the rest of the season. This has shockwaves that go out. None of these acts of badassery where you point and clap happen without taking a chunk out of the person who comes out of it victorious, right?
And we're the kind of people who want that chunk taken out of us. A lot of people who don't like this show or who don't like the same media that we like, a lot of the time, they don't want the chunk.
Yeah.
I always want to pay the chunk. I feel like I'm being tricked if I don't, pay the chunk. I love to pay the chunk. Yes. And just seeing the bill for the chunk show up at the end of this just makes me clap like a circus seal.
Yeah. Good episode of a good show.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks everyone for listening. We appreciate you. What can they do, Cole?
Well, if they like the show, they can support the show and the whole network by going to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv and kicking in a few bucks a month. You get lots of bonus content there. You can also leave a rating or review in whatever podcast directory you happen to have gotten this from.
Yeah. We'd love if you did that. You can also tell your friends. Things like that. And you can join us in thanking Gwen, who not only produces our shows, but composed our awesome theme song.
Very much. Thank you, Gwen.
Yeah, big thanks, Gwen. Until next time, boy, oh boy.
Yeah.
Listen to the universe when it's telling you not to be a cop.
Yep. ACAB, unfortunately, does include Hank.
Yeah, it's sad. I was thinking about the only thing that, ACAB, there's very few things it doesn't include. There, I give a special dispensation to Leon for ceasing to be a cop.
Yes, but then he becomes a super cop. He becomes like federal cop.
Yeah, I know, but that's not quite a cop. He's like the president's daughter's bodyguard. That's okay.
Okay,
he's more of like an agent. I'll let him be an agent. He's Leon.
AAB.